children. So, yeah, put children in a green space or a park if they're overactive. And sometimes our education system is very much just about let's sit and read and do things, and it isn't about being active. And I think we sometimes need to think about that. Okay, so if we're talking about what is a natural or a, environment for children to play in, I think we need some understanding of what we mean by that. And in the European and I think North American context, these are the sorts of things that we're looking at and thinking of as being more natural environments. You can see you could treat this one just as a piece of art or sculpture in the landscape, but it also could be, you can run around the maze, you can jump over it, there's lots of things you could do in that. Even that might have more play value than some of those kit fence carpet playgrounds that are just completely flat. But you can put little elements in, tree trunks, wooden equipment and sand. So we'll just move on to look at, and here's a reminder of what a kit fence carpet playground looks like. What are the elements of a natural environment? Well, first of all, landform. Nearly all of our kit fence carpet playgrounds are flat. And I don't know why we've done that. But landform is just so easy to introduce and can be combined with other elements and can be designed in. Sometimes it's not designed in. I mean, here's a space in a village where there's sort of pile of soil or stuff that's just been put there, and I think this is all the kids. There was nobody on the other bit of that. They're all just here. Is it because they've got the prospect by being up there and they enjoy running up and down? Why is it that that is the part of the space that they are choosing to use? It's obviously some affordance there that they're really enjoying. So sometimes the landform is designed in, and sometimes it just happens to happen in the environment. Vegetation, one of the things that we have done in our country is exclude vegetation from children's playgrounds. Partly in the 1980s there were two reasons. One was it's going to collect lots of litter and we don't want that, it means we have to go pick the litter out. And the other is, nasty men are going to lurk in the shrubs and jump out and attack children. It wasn't happening at all. So again, some of this is people's perception of what might be happening rather than the reality. But, you know, even when we've seen one tree can be great fun, here's another tree. Great fun. Somebody's decided who's going to climb up and pick whatever's picking. Two little girls have decided we're holding the basket for whatever's being picked, and this is all part of the play and the negotiation and the timing. But vegetation can be very designed in as well. Here's a very great mass of vegetation. Here's a smaller mass of vegetation, so you can walk through and experience it, and it can take many different forms. But you can see it's very different from here, where the vegetation is all outside the playground and not in it. You are not allowed to go and play in the vegetation, is what this sort of approach is saying. So, loose parts. There is something called the theory of loose parts, written by John Nicholson in America in the 1970s, talking about having loose elements for children to play with is very important. And this is one of my other favourite photos, this is Den. This is in a school playground in Germany, in fact. There's not many school playgrounds in the UK where you get that. There's one or two, but this is a beautifully made den out of some loose parts. It looks fairly permanent structure now, actually, I'd say, but they've been allowed to make it. Loose parts can take the form of many different forms. They can take the form of sticks, can take the form of flowers. So it's often we plant flowers, but children aren't allowed to pick them. We have stones that can be used, and children will play and make things with them. So there's a whole range of loose parts in our environments that we have excluded by taking this particular approach to our play spaces. Play equipment. Another of my favourite photos is this slide. So to prove to the play equipment manufacturers that are not against play equipment, it's a lovely slide. It's such a beautiful green setting, and they're very great fun. And here's some students on a field trip having fun on bits of play equipment in a housing area.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You just mentioned about the loose parts, that is sticks, flowers and stones.
Yeah.
So pebbles or stones, don't they add danger within the children while they are playing, that they can hurt themselves with it?
They might do, but it depends in the context and what the children, how you talk to the children about it as well. So some might, and some might not, because you can build things with them, or you can play games with them. And you might not have stones in every environment, but you might do in some. Yeah? So yes, I mean, and you could argue that about sticks. They might fight each other and injure each other, but children will always play with sticks and fighting. So there's a risk in a lot of these elements. And one of the things that we have done in these sorts of playgrounds is designed out all sorts of risk. You know, we put this rubber surface in, which is very expensive and has no playback in, because parents and society has been concerned about risk of falling off a piece of play equipment, where children might hurt themselves, graze themselves, or perhaps break an arm. They're not going to kill themselves. Okay, so it's all part of a big risk discourse that's been going on, particularly in the UK, but in other European countries as well. But you're right, it might be an issue, but might not be. And here's just one slide. This is a very boring slide. There's some much more exciting slides you can get around. This one's very close to a tree. I'm amazed it's allowed to be that close to the tree, but there we go. Other things in natural environments, earth, mud and sand, we have designed these out, except there are now some playgrounds that do include them. This is a playground, a very special playground in London, the Lady Diana Princess Memorial Playground, where adults are only allowed to go if they're with a child. And this is a very big pirate ship. And the child is inside, digging out through to get out. Well, where's the child? And this one's going, hi, or are they going to stuff sand in their nets? I don't know what they're going to do. But they're playing, and they are actually coming out. And the sand has allowed this to happen. This experience of tunnelling wouldn't have happened without it. Sand here. Mud in some places. There are a few nurseries in our city that actually tell parents not to send children to nursery in best clothes because they will play outside and they might get muddy. And I think part of the issue is changing the culture of parents thinking as well. You know, saying it's okay for them to go out and get a bit muddy. They can wash their hands afterwards. The clothes will wash. Don't send them in their best. This is a very muddy one. But what makes it the mud is the water, isn't it? So water is important. And here's an example of, just in our local park, a stream that kids love to actually go across these stepping stones or play along the water's edge further down. When we first showed this photograph to the government when we were doing some research on them, they didn't believe this was in our city. They thought this was countryside. They didn't think it was a city. And some of the favourite trees to climb are on the other side of here as well. But water can take a much more structured and designed approach, so even something like a small water pump here. This again is in that the Diana playground in London. At one time when I was just in this place, there was a whole queue of children wanting to get water from this, and water attracts children. But it can take lots of different forms as well. So we can end up, instead of kit fence carpet playgrounds, we can end up with playgrounds like this. So I say I have no idea really what the playgrounds that you have look like. So this has been designed under a government funding programme which lasted for 3 years and had design guidance with it. It's all gone now and people are back to doing kit fence carpets. It's a bit of a bright yellow slide. But this is more natural, it's using landform and it's using grass. Notice it hasn't got rubber surface underneath because the European regulations talk about you must have an impact absorbing surface, but it doesn't have to be rubber, it can be grass, and it's been misinterpreted for many years. That's quite a high level actually to have grass planting. But the other surface you can use is sand. So here's another one in a housing area where the approach taken is much different. As say, there's no rubber in sight at all. There's a climbing wall at the end of this wall here. There's climbing ropes. So there is still play equipment, but it's set in a space that's actually been designed. It's not just play equipment all plonked in and then fenced around. Here's another one. I bet the maintenance people might not like that, but you know, it doesn't matter if the grass grows a bit longer. We think that's good environmentally anyway. And here's another one. This has got a large sand area actually. These nest swings have become very popular in the UK these days because you get lots of kids in at once, and then in the evenings you get lots of teenagers. In my local park, there were so many teenagers on it, they broke the fitting up here, and the manufacturer said to me, "Helen, it's so annoying, it wasn't designed for 30 teenagers, so it wasn't strong enough." And I thought, well, perhaps you should have thought they right. But, so different ages using the spaces at different times as well as each other. So I just want to briefly introduce to you the tool that some of you I think have used. Have any of you used the play assessment tool on site yet? Or did you not? Oh, I don't know. I want to explain a little bit about it. You can see that with all this evidence that says more natural elements or natural things are good for children, I've been questioning why are we doing these play spaces in the way that we've done? Can we actually prove that doing them differently is better for children? Okay? And there's one person, oh, you shouldn't, I don't know this, but I wanted to see if we could, and could we assess the play value of these spaces? So how on earth do you go about that? So we had a project with a master's student who, she was going to go on and do a PhD, but for personal reasons, in the end she's pulled out, which is a shame, but it's also given me ownership of the tool back. Because we developed it together intellectually, I think. So, wanted to understand whether there's a relationship between the design approach and the play value of an outdoor play space. So did a kit fence carpet playground have less play value than something that's designed more naturally? That was sort of the hypothesis, really. But we were looking at it from the point of view of the designer, not from the children, and we could have done it from the children's point of view. And we make that very clear. And this is partly because it was a master's dissertation, so we only had a limited time in which to do the initial piece of work, which we treated as a pilot, but it's been published and it's been used in various parts of the world. And also because in our country, if you do research with children, you have to go through an ethics process, and it would have been a bit too complicated for us to involve children in that time, in that particular time frame we had for discussion. We might now, some years on, do it involving children, but we're looking at it from the designer's point of view. So the methodology was that we reviewed the literature about play and what makes for an outdoor play space that maximises children's play opportunities. And there is some literature that helps us inform that. From that literature, we developed a tool to assess the play value of outdoor play spaces. So it wasn't just coming out of our heads, how do we do this? We were looking at academically what other people have done. And then the aim was, once we'd identified the literature, brought it together, that we would test the tool. And this is all published in a paper which you can, if you get landscape research, it's in that. If not, I've got some copies of the, if you'd like the fuller text. I think they're at the hotel today. So, we looked at the different elements, so landform, vegetation, materials, loose parts, a range of literature. This has explained why these are important for children's play and what they offer. So landform is good for play, changes in level play, climbing, rolling, jumping, sliding. Vegetation can add aesthetic, creative and educational value, can be used as dens or an educational tool in teaching. So from the literature that we found, that looking at the reasons for these particular elements in the landscape being important. Then we also looked at play value, and different people have explained and tried to discuss what play value is. So there's a range of work there that we've looked at. And some people have looked at this by developmental function, so they've come at it from a developmental point of view, so environmental, physiological, creative, so we're creative kids, educational, social, so the space must allow for both small and large scale social interactions. Small areas allow for retreat, while larger spaces allow for team games and social reenactment. So very clearly drawing on this literature. And also, we have somebody in the UK who's a play worker. He's not an academic, but he has done research over the years, and he has come up with different play types. Now, you may or may not have come across this, because his publication is not an academic publication, it's only available in a particular format. I sometimes copy it and let my students have a copy of it, but he talks about different types of play. And he talks about symbolic play, rough and tumble play, socio-dramatic, social play, creative play, communicative play, dramatic play, deep play, which is when it's very deep, emotionally, exploratory play, fantasy play, imaginative play, locomotive play, mastery play, object play, role play, picturative, we're going over and over again. He started out with 15 types, he had a 16th one on, and you could look at this and say, actually, if you're watching children play, how on earth do you decide what they're doing? They might be doing several of these, but this is adults trying to understand children's play. I think, actually, I've come to the conclusion, if you ask children if they're playing, sometimes, well, I did this on the one research project. I wanted a title for the one publication we were writing, and I just said to my son, trying to word this in a way to not be a leading question, at playtime, what are you doing? Well, at break time, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're going out, So not going out to play necessarily, going out to do stuff. So the one publication we called Going Out Together, which was disabled children and non-disabled children. So I think, although adults think they want to try and categorise it all, it isn't always possible, but I think it has some help for us to understand some of the ways that we can enrich the spaces that we provide for children. So we brought together different people's understandings of play. So this is the play types. Somebody who's an early childhood educator talked about playtime, so he's a play worker, and this is the developmental things, and we brought them together and came up with 5 categories of constructive, functional, fantasy, social, and games with rules, which seem to incorporate all of these different approaches in the literature. And then this student took 10 sites in one particular part of the UK, in an area where she'd worked in the local authority. We even had difficulty choosing the sites at one stage. She had to go from the city centre out to the rural area to get a range of sites, which was interesting. She was getting all kit fence carpet, playgrounds, until she went more rural. So 10 sites, and scored them for the number of types of play that we thought they offered by what the landscape was there. So the constructive, functional, fantasy, social, and games with rules. And you can see a couple of them scored 5 for both. Some scored 1, and others were 3 and 4. So then we looked at, so the tool has 3 elements to it. One is the play value. Then the other one is the physical elements of the site, and those are all described in the paper. And again, those are all scored. And again, you can see there are different scorings, and in fact we've got a graph of this as well. So the maximum possible score is 60 for each site, and you can see that this site is scoring the highest. And by here, you can see there's a trend coming through, and that's why these are coloured. The lower numbers are being given red, then there's blue for the mid-range scores and green for the high scores. And this, if you remember, number 6 was the one that had the most play value as well. So it's environmental, its physical elements were the best. Sorry, that's the physical elements, and this is the environmental. Okay. So what we begin to see is a trend coming through of, when we analyse this, so there's the three pillars of, it's not just a kit fence, carpet, playground and a natural, but a range of schools, and we came up with this term of composite playground. It was something in between that was trying to perhaps be more natural but not quite achieving it, and achieving it in a sort of half-hearted way. And that's the reference to the paper. So this, from the sites that she looked at initially,